Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode number 43 of the RDO podcast. As always, well, not as always, because it hasn't been recently, but you're back with the Auto Bros, because I'm out of the woods, so it's good to be back. Thank you again for Liam for tagging in last week. Really appreciate it. Alex?
I thought we might start. We got some sad news last night. A good friend of ours sadly passed away from cancer.
Yeah.
And so we want to sort of tribute this one a little bit to Amy. She had a real rough trot towards the end too, so I think it's definitely better for her.
Yeah.
And we're here in support for everyone that's involved. So
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of people who know of the situation and have been around it, and look, our hearts go out to all of you. It's a terrible situation.
yeah,
But
I think she's in a better place now.
Yeah, like you said, she's had an extremely rough time of it. We're thinking of all of you who are involved, and if you guys need absolutely anything, obviously just reach out.
Yeah,
just please reach out.
Yeah. So I want to pivot, and you had something that you wanted to mention. I thought would fire off with yours first.
Yeah, mine's just a brief thing. Obviously, everything seems like it's not a big deal today, but this was something I was thinking about during the week. And obviously, being a footy fan, and we're coming up to State of Origin 1, there's obviously been a lot of talk about the NRL and their recent rule changes that they've brought in. Now, the whole idea of it is obviously to protect the head. So essentially, what they've changed is any contact to an attacking player's head at all, and you're on report, and you're sent to the sin bin for 10 minutes. Now, the last 2 weekends they've brought this in. It's been pretty terrible to watch, because the problem is that the NRL is such a high level sport that the teams are so well drilled when it comes particularly to defensive maneuvers and stuff like that, and defensive structures. And look,
Can I predict what it is from someone who has no idea?
Yep.
I would find it extremely challenging when that's all you've done for the inception of the sport. No, I'm not saying attack at the head, but you've got a certain way that you tackle, and the technique it has been the technique. Now, obviously, there has been head contact, and I think the reason why they're pushing it now is because head contact is CTE is in focus at the moment. Mm-hmm. But you can't just go and snap undo technique. And again, I know nothing, but I think that would create even more danger because now you don't know how to tackle, or an element of that tackle has been taken away.
Yeah, so you're really on the right path. Essentially, what a lot of people don't understand, who maybe even watch the game but have never played the game, or aren't really super fans of it, is now it's always been illegal to make contact to the head. It always has been. If you do a big head high, you'll get sent off. And that's been the case since the game's inception. There's been rules against it the entire time. Now, obviously, the game has cleaned up a lot over the last couple of decades. Back in the 80s was pretty brutal, and it has definitely cleaned up a lot. But the reality of the situation is, in today's game, defences are drilled to target a certain tackling zone. And what that tackling zone actually is, it's essentially between the chest and the shoulder. Because the idea of it is, an effective tackle is when you can halt the ball runner, but also tie up the ball. And when people are running the ball, generally it's like under the wing or in their hands.
Sure.
So if you're tackling them around this zone, you can wrap the ball up so they can't offload it.
Yep.
Because obviously in a game like rugby league, where it's about sets of 6 tackles, an offload is a massive advantage because essentially you get like an extra tackle, right? So the problem is, now, CT is obviously a big issue, and I think this has been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction because in the NFL, I think either the NFL themselves or a club recently got sued by someone because of CT. And look, obviously you don't want to see you want players to be safe.
For sure.
But let's be real. it's a grown man's sport, right? Anyone who goes into playing rugby league isn't assuming that they're never going to get injured the entire time they play that game.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing, though, is if this was so serious, why do they bring it in the middle of the season?
Yeah.
Right? It makes no sense.
No training camp.
No training camp. Like, they've already gone through pre-seasons, and it was about 9 weeks of footy playing in a certain way, and then they brought these changes in. Now, the people who are high up, like Peter Volandis, the new CEO who's brought this in, what they're saying is they're like, we've barely even changed the rule because you haven't been able to attack the head anyway, so why
don't
you...
say it.
Right? But the reality of the situation is this. That tackling zone gives you very little margin for error. And I've seen a lot of examples, like there was one last weekend in the Dragons game where there was a Sharks player running the ball, so attacking player running the ball. Now, two-man tackle. The first one has hit low because, again, they're trying not to hit the head. So the first one has gone and tackled around the hips. The second tackler had already committed to his tackling motion to tackle the shoulder level. The first tackler made contact first. What happened? It caused him to hunch over slightly. So then the second tackler, who's already committed to the tackling motion, made slight contact to the chin. He was off for 10 minutes. Completely changed the course of that game. Like, the other thing though, but this is the thing, so everyone in the media has been speaking about this the whole time. This is a thing that I haven't seen anyone speak about, and forgive me if I'm wrong, because maybe they have, but attacking players aren't the only ones who can get head injuries. So you have to consider this. At the moment, the tackling zone where you're trying to hit a player is around their chest, which generally means you're hitting with your shoulder, which keeps your head on the outside of the body.
Sure.
So when you're asking defensive players to lower their tackling zone, that means a defensive player, their head is now at risk of being hit by a shoulder, an elbow, a hip, or a knee.
The hard stuff.
Yeah. Right? The other thing that I found really interesting too, which I'd only really started considering this last weekend, but I think a lot of teams have been very well drilled in who's going to tackle high and who's going to tackle low to try to avoid injuring each other. Something I've seen a lot of lately is head clashes between defensive players. Because you've got two players trying to tackle on opposite sides of the attacking player around the same tackling zone, and they're going around the back and they're actually smashing their faces into each other.
And do one of them get sin binned?
Well, but like that's the whole thing, right? It's like, are you going to start sin binning an attacking player because their hip has made contact with the head of a defender?
Do you know what I would do?
Just sin bin everyone?
No, like as a player, knowing this rule, I'd get my head hit from the best player on their team and get a sin bin. You can change the course of the whole thing.
Yeah, and you'll see that, and that's the thing. They brought this in just before State of Origin, which is the showpiece of the game. It's the highest quality rugby league that you'll see in the world. It's better than the international game.
Yeah, they can't do it,
and it will ruin it.
They can't do it.
And the other thing too is there's no stipulations for, you've got certain players, and again, it's nothing against the players. But you've got certain players who, their style when they run the ball is oftentimes, they're trying to be elusive, right? And sometimes some of these players will actually drop their level and back into the defensive line because they're actually trying to keep the ball hands open for like an offload or something like that. Well, we saw one last weekend where James Tedesco drops and backs into the line. So a tackler who's already made a commitment to tackle him, he's dropped his level, touched Tedesco's head, and the guy gets sent off for 10 minutes. It takes...
Well, let me put this out there. Because I hate the NRL. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why I don't like the NRL is because I don't think it's run correctly.
Yep.
And name a rule that's changed that has helped the game.
Look, they have brought in some good things. To me, the 6 again rule that they brought in, which you, again, as someone who doesn't really watch the game a lot, it really did make the game more exciting. Mm. So essentially what the major change of the 6 again rule
I know what the 6 again is.
Yeah.
But
it prevents stoppages. It keeps the ball in play.
But out of how many rule changes have they had? Mm. How many of so that's one that you can say that has gone in the right direction?
Yeah, and this is the issue that you get where, as a means of survival financially, what you're seeing happening in a lot of major leagues, because it's not just the NRL. Like I'd say netball is in the same position because netball has financially struggled for many years. Instead of having CEOs running the game who know the game, love the game, and want to build a game, you've got business people running the game going, it's all about ticket sales, it's all about getting eyes on the sport. How can we bring more people in? So, which again, that's great in theory, but in practice, it's like, how do you... They were talking about junior participation in the sport. So kids are dropping off playing rugby league because it is a brutal sport, and head injuries are a real thing. Now, Gus Gould, who's one of the guys who, in my opinion, he's one of the guys who should be running the game. He knows, he knows the game, and he's
I don't like the guy, but I get his skills are perfect for that.
Completely agree. Yeah. He made the point where he goes, the junior game's really safe. They've brought in all these rule changes at a junior level, like for kids. It is a super safe game. But he goes, we don't actually tell anyone that. So you're talking about how junior participation's down. Well, that's because mum and dad go and watch State of Origin, the most brutal games that you can watch, and they go, well, I don't want Nate playing that game.
Yeah.
But the junior game's completely different because it is safe. They have done things, and no one talks about it. Look, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, and look, it's something we talk about on the podcast all the time. It's personal responsibility, and I don't like letting people get hurt. I don't like that. But in my opinion, like, I'm a sports person. I've had a knee surgery because I'm playing sports. It's my choice. Like, if I choose to play a brutal game, like I've done kickboxing before, that's really stupid when it comes to not getting injured. But I chose to do it because I found it enjoyable. And if you're doing it in a controlled environment, that is the best way to actually do those sorts of things if that's what you want to do. Where do we draw the line in, like, what you should be able to choose to do and what you should be able to choose not to do?
Well, look, I'm all for choice. I'm all for that. But I'm also about improving everything. And what I haven't seen NRL do is improve. They've tried to. It's in the right vein. But like, to what you're saying about the promoting of it, let's get ticket sales. Well, the best way to get ticket sales is to create a spectacle worth watching. That's right. First and foremost.
Which the 6 Again rule has done.
Yeah, so that is a good example. But you need more things like that.
Yeah.
Now, this thing that you've just spoken about now, to me, sounds mental. That is mental to do it at this time. Like, that's a big lead-up thing. So that's something that, like, in my view, should be announced now to take effect next year.
Yeah, that's right.
So that you can start coaching people on how to do it. Because I think that's dangerous. I think that, if I had to guess, I'll say there's going to be more injuries that we're not used to because we've changed the way that the fundamentals go together.
Yeah.
Now, I would also say, if you make the spectacle better, then you won't have to worry about the grassroots.
Yeah.
But if the spectacle looks like a shambles, which to me is a shambles, NRL's a shambles.
Yeah.
Netball is a shambles. If you clean that up, fix that up, made the spectacle great, everything else looks after itself.
That's right. The interesting point on statistics. So the 6 Again rule was brought in last year, and it has sped the game up. It has made the game more exciting. So I'll give them that. But the frustrating thing for me is they don't acknowledge the fact that by speeding the game up, they have contributed to an increase in injuries. Because that's already happened.
Because of fatigue?
Well, yeah, because of fatigue, but also higher speed game, higher level impact.
Yeah.
Right? So, shout out to my mate Patrick. He sent me through an article last weekend about the statistics for injuries so far this season compared to the average of the last 4 seasons. And major injuries. So they classify a major injury as an injury that keeps a player out for 5 weeks minimum.
Right.
5 weeks plus.
Yep.
Major injuries are twice what they have been.
Wow.
On an average basis, they're twice what they've been per weekend.
Sure.
Compared to the average over the last 4 years. Head injury assessments, players not returning from head injury assessments have gone up 33%.
Yeah, but that's not saying that there's more head clashes. That's just saying that they're not coming. It means something now, never meant something before.
Yeah, so the NRL's argument is that because they're policing it better, that players aren't being allowed to get around it, and so there is definitely a degree of that going on. But what people don't acknowledge about brain damage and CTE is, let's say that you're in a rear-end car accident. When you're in a rear-end car accident, someone hits up behind you and your airbags don't go off, you can still get whiplash. And what whiplash is when your head whips forward and backwards, that can give you brain damage. Because it's not the contact to the head. Like, you've had no contact to your physical contact to the head. It is the brain impacting on the inside of your skull. So just trying to lower contact to the head, but in the meantime speeding the game up.
I see.
You're having 100 kilo guys running full pelt at each other, running into each other. That causes whiplash every single time. So if the real thing is, if it's the thing that concerns me, if the NRL is making these changes because they're like, we're committed to cutting down on long-term brain injuries, which they should. Well, if you actually look at the science,
you're not doing the right way.
Well, it's not even that they're not doing it the right way. Scientifically speaking, cutting down on contact to the head is important, but cutting down on the collision is important as well. So then what's going to happen? What's going to be the next steps out of these? Are they going to have to slow the game down? So then not only are you going to have a game where every time there's a tackle, the crowd cringes because they think someone's going to get sent off, but it's also going to be a slower game too, because then you're going to have a boring spectacle.
In the old version of the game, the 80s and 90s version of the game, there was more one-on-one tackling.
Yeah.
But they weren't big hitters. They were a lot smaller guys.
Some were. Well, it wasn't a professional sport. Like, you didn't...
But what I'm saying is that I feel like that technique of... Their tackling technique was very different to the modern one, which is get real low, hit them at the thighs.
Yeah.
Because you had to put them on their back.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up that point as someone who doesn't watch the game, because you've indicated how little Peter V'landys, who's the CEO of the NRL, watches the game, because he said the exact same thing. So Gus Gould had an interview with him, and one of the questions he asked, which, funnily enough, was actually cut out of the official broadcast that got circulated, was, how would you tackle Jason Talmololo? Now, do you know who Jason Talmololo is?
If I had to guess, he's a big boy.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
He's big, Samoan boy, plays for the Cowboys. He's just a wrecking ball. His legs are like tree trunks. He's a absolute beast, and he's fast too.
Yeah.
And what did V'landys say? I just go low on him. I just tackle him around the legs. Do you know what Gus Gould said?
What?
Okay, you'd be punted from every NRL team in the league, because that's an ineffective tackle on a guy that's that big. I mean, if you go around the legs, what's he going to do? He just offloads the ball. You've stopped nothing.
I see. Yeah.
So the problem is, you've got a guy at the top who's brought in changes who doesn't actually understand how the game is played.
Yeah.
And it's all great to go, just go along them. Okay, cool. And just get the defensive players kneed in the face.
Yeah. And make the spectacle worse.
And make the spectacle worse.
Yeah.
And they get kneed in the face and don't even lock the ball up.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't tell me for a second, because one of the other things that came out of it was they were like, the players need to buy into it and they need to stop feigning for penalties, because you've seen a lot of players, as soon as they get touched around the head, go on, like, doing the flop.
Oh, so that is happening.
That's happening.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But again...
You made that.
You made that. You made that a thing. This is a high-performance environment. And unfortunately, in every sport on the planet, the role of a coach is to find out, okay, these are the rules. How can I exploit that to get a competitive advantage? You can't tell the players not to do that. The reality of the situation is, if they've been contacted to the head, they should make it look like they've been contacted to the head, because, penalties win games.
Yeah.
If you're going to have... If you get contact to the head, in these new rules, not only are you going to get a penalty,
they're off,
but you've got one less defensive player to worry about.
If I was, like, at kickoff, I would be aiming for the best player, and I'm just going chin first.
If I was a coach, or if I was in control of a club, I would just be trying to recruit players with the biggest heads in the NRL. Like, that would be the new body type you look for. I want big head guys. I want guys with big heads and long necks and small bodies. You'd go short people too. Because that's one of the other issues that you're seeing all the time now. All the tall forwards, like, they have to get down to such a lower level to tackle a shorter player.
Yeah.
And if that shorter player also ducked his level too, like, it's been
dumb.
a bit of a farce.
It's a
So, look, I wouldn't be surprised if somehow this gets walked back quietly at the end of the season or something like that. But unfortunately, we're going to have to work our way through this shit show for the rest of the year. But at the end of the day, there's only 2 clubs that can win it this year anyway, because no one's beaten the Panthers and the Storm.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a bit frustrating as a league fan.
Now, we should have actually started off with this and I forgot. So last week I asked for the 50th subscriber.
Yeah.
And not only did we get the 50, we broke through. We broke through 50 to 53.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Something else I'm going to say out of that too, because I looked at some of the back-end statistics. 48% of you watchers aren't subscribed. Oh. What are you doing?
Just click subscribe.
Just hit the subscribe button, you dogs.
Even if you're just a Russian hacker or a bot, please subscribe.
We are a 100% inclusive podcast. We'll take Russian hackers. We'll take Nigerian kings.
Princes, I think.
Oh, they're princes?
Yeah, I think they're princes.
Oh, yeah. I guess the kings aren't sharing the money.
No.
The princes are trying to get out of the country.
Yeah.
Is it the second in line, so they know that they're never going to get the kingdom to themselves? Like the Prince Harry type situation?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
So, yeah, all your Nigerian princes or Russian bots.
Propaganda machines.
Chinese sleeper agents.
All of it.
Yeah. Just subscribe.
And it does help us, and thank you very much. And we have really enjoyed the banter in the comments as well, which has been good.
Yeah, it
has been really good. It's been it's not a heated area. We don't like the heat. We like proper conversation. We've had some proper conversation, which is really, really good.
You can one thing that I feel like is an art that has just been forgotten about on the internet is that you can be funny without being offensive. Like, we love jokes. Jokes are great.
Yeah.
But you don't have to... Every joke doesn't have to be targeted at someone. You can just say something funny about a subject.
Good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. It's a forgotten art, I think.
Now, another hark back to last pod where Liam said, find your value and don't spend money on shiny shit. I want to show you the shiny shit that I bought. So, for the people that are listening and not watching, in the height of the crypto thing, and I don't know if I told this story before, but Tasha kind of doesn't realise the power of crypto, or she saw these numbers on the screen and just thought that, I was playing pokies or whatever.
Yeah.
So to prove to her how good it was, I just went and splurged on some ridiculous stuff, like a $6,500 gaming PC and a watch. I got a new watch, and I always like to get a watch
when there's been a significant
event.
Yeah.
And I hadn't actually bought one for a long time. So, and I wanted something kind of cool. So I'm a nut for, like, my collection is an obscure collection. I like things that are different. I like different movements. I like quartz, automatic, mechanical, hybrid, solar, kinetic. Like, I want one of all of them. Anyway.
Could I say that it's because you're innately attracted to the story around different items rather than the item itself?
Exactly.
Would that be fair?
Yeah. It's, for me, it's all about how it got there and why they made it. I bought a System 51 Swatch watch. It's an automatic movement, 100% plastic, and 100% made by machines. And it was cheap, $250 watch or something.
Did you buy that from Skynet?
No, I bought that in Switzerland before it came out here. Now it stopped working already because plastic sucks. But I had to know what it was like to appreciate a new version of what, like, old watchmaking is all about handcraftedness and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Now this proves to me that handcrafted is better.
So my head just went, because I'm thinking full robotic factory creating this thing. So when you call customer service, you'd get an automated response, but it's actually a robot on the other side of the phone.
Yeah. And just,
help me, I direct your call. Like, oh damn it, I got a machine again. Yes, I am a machine.
We are 100% mechanical.
Yeah.
So I've been following this watch brand for a while now, and what struck me is a mate of ours is working with them. And it's it's a guy that's trying to change the watch industry. Switzerland has this stranglehold on it. It's a racket. Rolex is a racket. Okay, so they purposely make less pieces than what they know the
supply and demand.
The supply is going to be, and then the used market just goes through the roof. And because of that too, they can be sneaky with component costs and things like that. It doesn't cost 10 grand to make a watch.
No.
I'm telling you. It doesn't cost 10 grand to make a steel sports watch.
Yeah. What is the benefit to the watch company for having a high used market?
Brand.
Yeah.
The strength of the brand.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because you can go and say, the best example between for Rolex is Seiko. So Grand Seiko is a high end version of Seiko. Side by side, the Seiko is probably a better watch.
Okay.
The Seiko is probably half the price, but it has no resale.
Yeah. Okay.
So a $7,000 Grand Seiko Snowflake, which is on my list, that's one that I want. You probably buy a second hand one for $4 grand.
Right.
But if you went and bought an entry level Oyster Perpetual Rolex for I think the 10 or 11 grand, you could go sell it the next day for 15.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay, so
exclusivity.
Yeah. The whole shebang bang. Anyway,
which again is all about the story too.
It's all about the story. So Aventi wanted to come out and they wanted to use high end materials. They wanted to aim for, there's a brand called Richard Mille, which if you watch any Formula One, every driver's wearing a Richard Mille watch. They're outlandish, often skeleton designs where you can see through them. You can see all the
componentry.
The componentry
That's
in it.
cool.
They use cool materials, lots of carbon fibre, lots of titanium, things like that. So they wanted to make something kind of modelled off that model. Now, Richard Mille is not Swiss, and it went from I think it was an original investment of like $500,000, and in 10 years it's $1 billion company.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so this guy's probably trying to emulate that pathway. So he created a brand called Aventi. Now, I suppose his niche is that he's going to use high-end materials, titanium, and a tourbillon movement, which is a French word. It's an automatic movement that has a different escapement mechanism to counteract gravitational forces.
Right.
It's an absolute wank. Like we don't need it, but it looks cool. All right, it looks cool.
Yeah.
And the cheapest tourbillon movement's like 50 grand. Like if you want to buy a watch with a tourbillon movement, it's like $50,000. So Aventi's got two different brands, the A10 and the A11. The A10 is a titanium one with the tourbillon movement. The A11 is all sapphire. So the whole case is made out of clear sapphire, which is freaking cool. So the cheapest clear sapphire tourbillon movement is probably a $70,000 watch.
Right.
That watch is like 10 grand. I didn't buy that one, but I want to. I bought the A10, the titanium one.
Yeah.
And I'll show it up in the camera.
Yeah. Have a look from behind the camera to make sure you can actually see it too. So all of you audio listeners are going to have to come and join us on YouTube just for this segment so you can see how wanky Alex's watch is.
It is bling. It is huge. It is glary. It's a real showpiece, and I really like it. So shout out to Aventi. We should probably tag them on there. Oh, their whole business model is great too. They don't retail them, so they don't go to a retailer and have them in a shop.
Yeah.
They're basically made to order. They're Chinese made for now. They will move to Swiss manufacturing. But this is like the first series, and that's why I wanted to get in, because I think the story's great. Like, I'd love to have one of the first pieces that Aventi offered. And they have like a concierge service. So you have to apply to speak to someone to talk about purchasing the watch. So the experience is pretty cool. The unboxing was beautiful, like a real experience. It was really cool.
You should have filmed it.
I can film it. I'll film what the box looks like, and we can post up if you like. I dig it, and they don't do any regular advertising, so they don't pay. They don't do any sponsored ads. So they will send watches to watch reviewers on YouTube, but not pay them, and they'll want the watch back.
Okay.
They'll just say, "Here, give us a real breakdown of what you think the watch is like.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sit in the comments and they'll talk to people in the comments. That's basically been their way of advertising. I think it's great. It's really authentic.
Yeah.
They're not shying away from the idea. Like they tell you, like this is a Chinese movement.
Yeah.
What's sneaky about the Swiss watch thing is the ratio of how much componentry means you can have Swiss made on it.
That's in everything in the whole world. Like that's in Australian made stuff over here too. As if there's a certain, like it could be Australian made, but from international components. Like that's in everything.
So I think it's really cool, and this is the first day that I've worn it. I think it's rad, and it's going to be a bit of a conversation starter. You know, It's got a really big loom, like that whole outer. There's like a double outer border that illuminates. But it's got crystal sapphire glass. Body's made out of titanium. Little touches like even so this colour they've discontinued, and Ryan was telling me why.
Cha-ching.
Well, he was telling me why. So this is burnt titanium. So nerds out there know that when you heat titanium, it changes from like a steel colour to like a purpley, bluey sort of hue, and it's very inconsistent.
Right.
And this is that they made the case and then they heat treat it, so all the colours are pretty different. So it almost changes, but they have a massive failure rate. He reckons 25%, only 25% of them make it through their quality testing, and then they have to bin them. So he's like, we've discontinued them. It's just too hard.
Binning heaps of titanium.
Well, when he's telling me that, I'm like, I want it more now.
Yeah.
So I waited.
He knows exactly that's going to be the response to that too.
I waited like 3 or 4 months for it, but little nice touches like even the little Aventi logo there, the clasp is all in that titanium colour as well. I just think it's freaking rad. Shout out to Aventi.
Well, just like Liam said, find your value, because obviously I can see how excited you are about the watch, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
You're allowed to be into whatever it is that you're into.
Now, do I feel bad? Because it was a significant. It was not a cheap watch, but I used my crypto earnings to buy it, and now crypto shit itself. Like I received it as it's like had a week of absolute bloodbath.
Well, which is perfect because it means that you use crypto earnings, that you sold your crypto at the top.
True.
And then you use it to buy something that you wanted.
That's true.
Which potentially, because it's been a discontinued style, that could be the next Bitcoin that goes through the roof. You could have made the best financial play that buying a watch will ever be.
Do you know what's not a good financial play? Investment property.
Yeah, so I want you to start from the beginning on this one, because I asked Alex if he was okay to speak about this, because he has 2 investment properties, one of which you've had for it'd be almost 15 years now, right?
Yeah. It's my first house.
Yeah, first house. And it's interesting because we've obviously talked about investing a lot on the pod, and investing is something that I've really only become mindful of mid last year during like when I left work and I actually started focusing on a lot of this stuff. And the reason why it's interesting to me is because it's something that Amanda and I had discussed potentially doing before we did the share portfolio thing.
Sure. Because
we've got equity in our current house, so we're like, why wouldn't we could use the equity to buy a rental property? So oftentimes people talk about the benefits of having a rental property. You've experienced some of the dark side of having a rental property.
Yeah, how long have I had it rented out for? 10 years or something, maybe a bit less. And so the idea being, a rental property, the idea being you get someone else in to pay off your house.
Yeah.
Okay. You get tax benefits if you're running at a loss, and you often are running it at a loss where the weekly rental income is less than what the cost of that property is to you. So not only can you start paying your house off a little bit, but you get, at the end of the year, whatever that loss is comes off your taxable income, and you get some tax benefit.
So you get negative gearing tax
benefits. Negative gearing, yeah. There is a provision in the Australian tax system to help, the idea being the rent is cheaper now because there's an incentive to run at a loss.
That's right.
Okay. So I've had this property, rented it out, been burnt in the past where I basically had someone live in it for 4 months without paying rent. And the thing that sucks is that whenever it goes to... The system is very much in favour of the tenants, not the landlords.
Which is interesting too, because so that's with like I guess a private or a retail renter, but in the commercial space it's the polar opposite.
Yeah, but what I would also say too is that people's perception is that landlords have all the power. We got no power.
Yeah,
no power.
Yeah.
So anyway, this most recent one, I've said on the pod I want to list them for sale, and I want to move that liquidity from one investment to an investment that I think will work better, which is the stock market. My tenant in number one just decided he's not going to pay rent anymore, so he stopped paying rent, and not only that, won't allow access to my property manager or my sales agent. I can't do a property inspection from prospective buyers. So so what happens is, after a certain amount of time, we can put like a notice to leave. This guy's lease was already up. Let's say the lease was up on the Friday. He'd not paid for like a month.
Yeah.
We take the bond money to cover, but now he's got no bond money and he's still in the place.
Yeah.
Then we do like a notice to vacate. Once...
What's the time frames for these? Like, because you have to step it out, and there's periods of time where
I think it's like a week or 2 weeks per thing. Now, my property managers have been absolutely onto it. What got burnt last time when I had those tenants in there for like 4 months is that real estate office, inept.
Yeah.
It was their fault because they did not action any of the forms that I was supposed to action at the time. So First National in Miami, excellent.
Okay.
The day that they were eligible to send the letter, boom, the letter was sent. So everything, is in line.
Also, any listeners out there who have a rental property and are looking, like on the Gold Coast and looking for a good property manager, hit me up because I know one. And I'll hook
Oh, yeah. Fan of the show.
Yeah.
So the guy stops paying rent. We do notice to leave. He just decides he's not going to leave. So then the next step is it goes to QCAT. I don't know what QCAT stands for. Queensland something.
Court of Arbitration or something.
Something like that. And then my property manager and the tenant go before a judge, and the judge will rule on it. Now, in the past, the judge has ruled in the tenant's favour three out of 4 times.
Yeah.
When they just hadn't paid.
What is the basis that they rule on behalf of the tenant? Like, do you...
Financial hardship. So you just say, I'll come up with a payment plan to get there. Problem is, if you're a week behind on your rent, it's very hard to get 2 weeks in advance, So the previous time, they never paid $1 after that. And then the next time it went to QCAT, they said the exact same thing. Oh, we'll just, try a bit harder to pay. Then it went again. And on the third time, it was like, nah, you're not paying. Get out. And they left. This guy decided, I'm not leaving. So the good thing was he never showed to QCAT.
Yeah, that was probably the best case scenario, wasn't it?
Absolutely, because if he would have just said, I just can't come up with the money, the judge probably would have said, all right, go on financial hardship and come up with a payment plan.
And then that buys them 3 months or whatever the time period is,
So it goes to QCAT, he doesn't show, rules in our favour. So then you get a notice of, a warrant of possession is the next form that's issued. So within like a 2-week period or something, there's a date that's set on the X day of this month, we'll be coming in to change the locks.
So just on that, so they call it a warrant of possession, do they? And is that because you're taking possession of the house?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how you already own it, and yet you have to take possession back from a tenant who's not paying the rent?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, continue.
So you get a warrant of possession, and then the police and my property manager and a locksmith go into the property, change the locks. Now, the tenant knows, or the squatter in this case knows that date, what that date's going to be, and they're supposed to be out by then. He's not out.
I still am. Okay.
I think so. The warrant of possession has happened. The locks have been changed, but his stuff is all over the place.
Yeah, because I did a drive-by and there was like a carporty looking tent thing out the front too.
Yeah. There's junk everywhere.
Yeah.
I have to foot the bill for that stuff out the front. So we've given this guy some time. All right, so just have the next couple of days, get all your crap out of there.
Yeah.
But there's no motivation for him to do that. And nor he won't be able to get a rental property because he'll have a blacklist on his name. So I get that it's hard.
But, like, surely this sort of behaviour is like I don't feel like this sort of abuse of a rental property is just something that changes when you move into a new place. Like, it makes you just wonder, like, how did he have references to get in there in the first place?
Well, someone who has seen the guy thinks it might be a substance issue.
Yeah, I know, but, like, so substance issues could possibly mean that's why I'm not paying rent. And especially in the last 12 months with everything going on, you could easily say, okay, he's lost his job, but the actual taking care of the house, like, to me, they're two different things.
Oh, no.
Like, one's a behavioural thing.
No, I've seen it happen 1,000 times where someone's like, "Oh, you're going to kick me out, are you? Well, I'm going to kick a hole in this wall."
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, like the house has looked like a shit show for months. It looked like a shit show before he stopped paying rent.
Yeah.
Right, so it's like, if the house is a shit show, normally that would be on your record for when you go to get a rental in the first place.
Yeah, there's a lot of property managers out there that
they just don't give a shit.
Don't care.
Yeah.
So,
'cause as long as they're getting that percentage cut of whatever the rent is.
So I'm in a situation where I'm like 2 months, no income from the tenant. I'm still paying my mortgage.
Yeah.
Now, I can't sell the place because it's not in a state where I can.
Well, you can't even.
I can't
even get into it.
Yeah, can't even get into it.
Yeah.
So, and so basically, what the long and the short of it is, it's hard. Like, property management sounds cool. Well, I've got all these investment properties, but dollar for dollar. Now, there are better performing properties for sure, but dollar for dollar, you will make more money in the stock market than you will on most properties.
And then you've also got the liquidity factor, which is if you need that money that's in your shares, you can just sell them whenever you want to, and you can take that money and do whatever it is that you need to do. So
yeah, it is I don't recommend it. I don't. If you're going to buy your home to live in, go for it.
Yeah.
But investment property, no.
The only way that I've seen, I've thought about this a lot, and I think the people that really benefit from things like investment properties are people who are running larger scale companies and stuff like that, who are looking for tax offsets. Like,
well, not so much running companies, but if you were on a high income,
really high income,
like PAYG income, and you wanted to reduce your tax, then property is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And you can get multiple properties. And the other benefit of having the high wage is that banks will want to lend you money because you've got the capacity to pay it.
That's right.
So look, it does suit some people, but if you're a young person out there that's on a normal wage, don't feel pressure to go and buy a property, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can make wealth in other ways, in much easier ways.
For sure. Because, especially if you're someone who is inclined to stress as well. Like, I think about it now as a homeowner, and I go, so we've bought our place, we've got a mortgage on it, and that's all great. And we've thought, we've discussed in our family potentially moving at some stage, just for an adventure.
Yep.
And then we're like, oh, you could move and you could rent our place out. And then I go, it's my house. It's my kingdom, it's my castle. And it's just like the thought of having someone come in, treat it like shit, damage it, like that actually, I wouldn't say it's a fear, but it's just not a nice feeling.
Well, it's a reality.
Yeah.
It's a reality. You are creating the variable in which you could have that scenario. Where it's not going to happen if you live in it. Now, financially, it's not your home is a liability. So everyone that thinks that it's your home is an investment, it's not. It's actually a liability.
Yeah, because your mortgage that comes out of your monthly income, obviously seen as a liability on a spreadsheet.
Yeah. So that was a bit. That's been taxing, and it's been taxing the entire time. Like, the amount of times that someone's just late, and you're expecting the money, and it's a considerable amount of money. Like, you're talking, $1,500 to $2,000, $2,500 in a month, and then when that money doesn't come in, especially if you've got multiple properties, and there's been times where both of them haven't paid, and you're like, oh wow, there's like, $4,000 that hasn't been paid, and you're like, what am I've got to pay. I still have to pay.
And to me, it just doesn't make sense when it's like you sign contracts for this stuff. Like, I'm probably misguided, but I thought once upon a time you sign a contract, that means it's a legally binding thing. If you breach contract, well, the whole contract's null and void. Yeah. So not only are you signing, contracts with your tenants that they're going to pay you in a certain period of time and they're going to treat the property well, but you're signing a contract with your landlord, your real estate agents and your property managers that they're going to perform the service that they're supposed to perform. And obviously you're getting good service out of this one, but your previous one was dog shit.
Yeah.
I can remember stories of when you've had periods like that 4-month period where they weren't paying, but your property manager was still stinging you their percentage of money that they weren't even getting for you.
Yeah.
Like, how does that make any sense? Like, you're being paid for a service that you're not performing.
Yeah.
So, like, it's very, I don't know, it's just very frustrating. I think that there's a bit of that in the world now of generally being a little bit selfish, not caring about people down the chain from you. And when you're the owner of an investment property like you are, well, now you've got the ability for your financial future to be affected negatively by two entities.
And the other thing I'd also say too is that if you are a young person now wanting to get into property, sounds great now. The money will never be cheaper than what it is right now. But when I got mine, and I don't want to sound like a boomer, but when I got my loan, it was 9.89%. You can probably get them in the ones now.
Yeah.
It'll change.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it'll go up. It just cyclic. Be in no rush to go and buy a property now. And don't let this pressure now, especially there's a massive amount of pressure in the market now. A lot of these people from Melbourne moving up, Sydney and Melbourne, moving up here. It's even worse now that they're on another lockdown. Yeah,
Well, I was about to say, it's super relevant again. Like, all of a sudden, everyone thought it was life back to normal, and now 7-day lockdown.
But what I will say is, we have a rush, an influx of people in southeast Queensland coming up here, moving up here, using all their equity in their properties that have outperformed ours by miles. There'll be a point where they realise, oh, Brisbane and Gold Coast sucks compared to Melbourne. Melbourne's a better city than here. I know that for sure.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a city dweller, but Melbourne's my favourite city in the country.
Yeah. So those people will realise, oh, I want to go back home.
Well, the other thing too is that, like, there's a reason why property is outperformed in city centres like Melbourne and Sydney than it has in Queensland. It's because of the job opportunities. Like, the higher income roles are in major cities like that. So if you want to live close to work to earn a high income, generally you're paying high prices for your housing.
And we all thought the Rona was going to make people work from home. But all the reports that are coming out, all the bosses, all the managers want everyone to come back to justify what they do.
Yeah.
So there's going to be all this pressure from up top, which is the same.
It's ironic, right? On the way up here, I was talking to the wife about leadership because she's doing another leadership course at work, and she has to do a presentation on part of the 15 disciplines of leadership. And it's just really interesting how the majority of the people who I believe get sent on like leadership courses and stuff like that is typically middle management.
Yeah.
Because the senior management
don't want to hear it.
Yeah. They don't want to change. Yeah. Because they got to where they're at in a certain way. And like, we were discussing this, and it's like the irony about having proper leadership skills is, and this is a line from the book, is instead of asking, what do I require of the situation, which is what your CEO has pretty much asked their entire career to get to that point, a proper leader is supposed to ask, what does the situation require of me?
Yeah.
But ironically, most people in the top jobs aren't asking that. They're asking, how can I keep this top job? And just like what you just said just there is a perfect example of it, where you've got managers and senior people in companies requiring their staff to come back to a workplace when they don't want to, purely because they require it to justify what they're doing to keep their position.
Yeah, exactly.
It is crazy.
Wild. It is wild.
Mind you, I'm in a situation where my job I'm completely at the beck and call of my employee. At the moment, like there was one thing we spoke about is literally parenthood is that perfect example of, instead of what is it that I want to do, it's, well, what does the situation require of me? Because if I want to go to sleep at night, but Nate's pooed himself in bed, well, I can't go to sleep, can I? I can't just leave him to sleep in his poo-poo. So, yeah, it's interesting.
It is interesting.
It's very interesting. And look, I guess just one, I will note on too, just the whole COVID lockdown in Melbourne. One of the things that I was looking at on the news this morning is obviously the Tokyo Olympics. It's like 2 months away. And I remember at the start of the year there was something mentioned about it where the Japanese government was talking about calling it off, but the IOC was
Dick Pound.
Yeah, Dick Pound. Is he still the top dog? Yeah. One of the greatest names in sports. But yeah, the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee, was essentially like, no, like we're not in the business of cancelling Olympics. We're in the business of organising Olympics. And I just find it so, what staggers me, because there's been examples of this even in Australia, is where we've got a global health pandemic on at the moment. We've got constant messaging on TV, social media, any media that you consume about how dangerous this pandemic is and the things that we could or should be doing to help out. And yet we want to hold international sporting events where you're getting literally representatives from every country in the world to converge on one country. And Japan's a small country with a large population, so you don't have a lot of space over there, and an aging population. And you're like, is this thing really that important? Because we're just selling it out for $1.
Yeah.
Like Australia did it earlier in the year with the Australian Open. Like we held the Australian Open Tennis Championships, which is an international sporting event. And because, again, we've had all these real strict protocols. Like, I got to remember a month ago, they tried to ban people coming back from India, like Australian citizens coming back to the country from India. Because there's no financial gain, but we'll hold a sporting event in Melbourne. And that was the last lockdown. Like, well, not last one, but it was one of the lockdowns. That caused the lockdown in Melbourne, was having that event.
Yeah.
Like,
it seems like it's when these large people are going to make $1, that's when things change. But all the little people that have to close up, because I know, for example, like, you know, the Inkpay, a lot of the tattoo artists in Victoria, they were the first to lock and the last ones to be allowed to reopen, and it has cost them a fortune.
And the thing is too, during this time, this is something else I spoke to the wife about during the week. Like, there's been a lot of pushback against billionaires and stuff, especially in the media and everything, in recent times, and talking about things like wealth disparities and movement of wealth from the poor to the rich. And what I think a lot of people don't realise is that's literally what we're doing right now. So when you consider things like the pandemic that's on at the moment, what has happened is you've got situations where businesses have been forced to close, which obviously costs the little people the most, because the little people are generally the employees and small business owners. Now, we've also seen at the same time many large businesses being given special graces to stay open, right? But that aside, the businesses that have thrived in this time are giant multinational corporations, your Amazons, your Facebooks, like YouTube, those businesses have thrived in this period of time. But the other thing too that I think a lot of people don't take into account is, so all of the COVID mitigation practices that we're doing in this country at the moment, that the government's doing, so things like all of the testing, like we've got a public healthcare system, that's fantastic, because it's, you know, if you need to go and get a test, the tests are all free. Well, not free. Like, it's our tax money. So not only is the income lower, because the little people have lost incomes a lot of the time. And look, JobKeeper was great, but JobKeeper's our money too. Like, that's our tax dollars that have created JobKeeper. But I read an article mid last year about the COVID tests, and Medicare was reimbursing. Well, sorry, it was when they first started doing a lot of the testing. They were reimbursing doctor surgeries $24 per test. And a lot of the doctor surgery said it's not enough money. Because I think the average amount that they get reimbursed by Medicare is like $65 an appointment. So, which is why obviously they run your appointments through. And being someone who's been to the doctors a million times in the last 5 months, I think I've been to the doctors 20 times and I've probably spent 15 minutes in total time in front of them. But yeah, so the doctors, a lot of them essentially said, well, it's not worth our...
We don't want to do the
It's
testing.
not worth our time, we don't want to do the testing. So then the government actually had to increase the money to $100 a test. And then all of a sudden you've seen drive-through testing facilities, right? So you got to think it's $100 a test. Now, I was listening to the news this morning, so with the current lockdown in Melbourne, since that's happened, which has been, 2 or 3 days, they've done 56,000 tests. So that's 56,000 multiplied by $100 worth of taxpayer money in like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Like, that's the wealth transfer.
All you've done is converted already reduced tax money or already incentivized free welfare money into the pockets of medical facilitators.
Yeah. Yep. So, like, that's the stuff where, we need to be mindful of these things because I don't see an end to this in the near future. And I've seen a lot of it spoken about on the news about our way out and all that sort of stuff. And it always seems to be the way out is something that hasn't happened yet. So we need to work towards this thing. But again, I reckon everyone in Melbourne thought they were basically life back to normal until now. And it's always life back to normal until it isn't. And it's real quick that it isn't too. But, I feel for people, especially in Melbourne, like business owners and stuff like that, who've they're just trying to claw back to where they were at. I saw another article about COVID, what is it? I can't remember what the term was that they used, but it's like an aversion to go on hotspots. So you know how they've had like contact spots. So a lot of businesses who have been called as a contact spot have found that even when everything's all over and they're allowed to reopen, that their client base has gone down because there's a stigma that they were a hotspot for COVID contacts. So there's such an economic flow-on effect, which really affects the lower level people. And then again, it affects us in the long run too, because
we've got to pay it.
Well, we got to pay it, and not only are we paying it, like we're borrowing money to pay for all this stuff, which means, like, I think our national debt's hitting $1 trillion over the next 4 years or whatever it was in the budget.
Bring back John Howard.
Yeah, well,
let's get that surplus. Stop spending the money.
Yeah, and again, like you don't want to say it's all about money, but as we've spoken about on the pod before, unfortunately, when you take away the ability for people to take care of themselves, that's when things start going a bit pear-shaped. And I mean, look at your situation for an example. That's the flow-on effect. So let's say that this dude's not a drug addict, but let's say that your renter, he just fell on hard times, lost his job because his business closed down because of a lockdown, and now there's no job keeper or job seeker, right? It's because those things have been removed. So that affects him. But now, through the flow-on effect, not only does that affect him, but it affects you. Because you've now got a mortgage that you have to pay out of money that you're not receiving, which then affects what you can invest that money in, or even excess money that you can go and spend in the community, which you might have the coffee shop down the road, which is a small coffee shop that we like to go to up the road here, who you're like, oh, things are a little bit tight, I can't go and spend my money there at the moment. So then it flows on to them. And then they might have 5 or 6 people that are in the same position. And then they go, oh, well, we're not getting enough people through. We're going to have to let one of the casuals go. Like, it's a flow-on effect which affects people. So as much as we want to be safe, we do need to be measured in our approaches to these things, because I don't think that just snap lockdowns all the time are the answer. And especially when, like, one of the other things I was thinking about too is, like, what is the purpose of announcing a lockdown at 10 o'clock in the morning and saying it's at midnight tonight?
Well, my understanding is that the reason why they do the lockdowns is so that contact tracers can go and find out where everybody went.
Yeah, I understand
And
that.
then basically put everyone in stasis so they can go and
Yeah,
find it.
I get that. But you would say, we're announcing the lockdown at 10 a.m. this morning, it's effective immediately. Everyone go home, don't touch anyone.
Well, no, because the contact tracers can't. There's no. I do get that. I know that it's easy to say, oh, the virus tells the time and rah rah, but
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that they literally so this time it was like a 10 a.m. announcement for a 12 midnight lockdown. That's when lockdown started. So you've got half a day for people to go, I don't want to be locked down for 7 days. I'm bailing to Sydney, to Queensland, to whatever.
yeah,
Like, the whole point is to obviously contain the spread.
yeah.
But
Well, no. The point is contact tracing.
Yeah.
That's the point.
But why do you contact trace? To see if anyone else has got it.
Yeah.
So all those people that you want to contact trace could still bail.
Have we had any deaths?
Well, no. I think the numbers on the news this morning was that the amount of cases has risen to 35 people.
Yeah.
From 56,000 tests and 76 contact sites.
And how many died?
Well, 0 so far.
Interesting.
Yeah, and, it's been, obviously there's been a lot of stuff in the States at the moment about the whole lab leak theory and all that sort of stuff, which a lot of key figures and media figures have flip-flopped on in the last month or so as well, which, certain people have known about it for 12 months.
Yeah. Well, it's longer than 12 months. Remember the whole flatten the curve thing? Like, flatten it now, so we don't have to worry about the... That was 18 months ago now.
Yeah, and see, this is what gets me too. That made sense. You flatten the curve so that your medical system can keep up with people coming through. And ironically, the reason why, the main reason why that was is because back then we were we don't have enough ventilators. Well, we've then come to find that ventilators actually make the problem worse.
Yeah. And now the oversupply of ventilators are in landfill.
Yeah, they're in landfill. But, so, the hospitals aren't exactly being overrun with patients at the moment.
Not here.
Definitely not over here. And I get really frustrated about the messaging that the majority of people, people who watch the news or ABC News and stuff like that, I watch it to know what's being spoken about, and then I go and I look for other sources too, because I want a balanced view of, and then I put together what I feel like is happening, and I guess what I can do to conduct myself in the future for the benefits of myself and for my family. And what I get frustrated about is, in my opinion, the media is complicit in creating a lot of the issues that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. There's two examples that I can speak of. One of them was when Australia was first full on doing the AstraZeneca rollout, and we were going to be producing AstraZeneca vaccine over here. One thing that I kept seeing played on TV and on the news all the time was a lady from the European Union who was talking about it, because it was when the first blood clot issues started arising. And she was talking about how the benefits of the vaccine were outweighing the risks at that particular time. And they kept playing that on Australian TV. But when you actually look into it, she's not addressing Australia. She was addressing the European Union, which at the time had hundreds of thousands of COVID cases and ramping up death numbers over there as well. So again, when you're looking at the stats and the numbers, you go, okay, well, X amount of people have the virus, so it would make sense over there that currently the risk of the benefits of the vaccine would outweigh the risk. But they're playing that on Australian TV because they're trying to convince everyone over here that the benefits of taking the vaccine outweigh the risk. But it didn't in Australia. And we got really lucky. I was having a conversation the other night with someone. We got really, really lucky that these side effects from the AstraZeneca vaccine happened so early, so Australia could can that program.
Yeah. How many died from it? Is it 5?
I think it was, the most up-to-date numbers I saw were 5, but I think that's a month old. I was talking to you on the phone yesterday. I went on the Therapeutic Goods Administration website to try to see, because they've got a register of what they call adverse events. It's not just deaths, it's just reactions to the vaccines and stuff like that. And what I find a little bit troubling is that they haven't actually updated the website. This is a government website. It hasn't been updated since the middle of April. It's the end of May now. And again, one thing I want to clearly state is I am not telling anyone or their families what to do in regards to vaccination. As far as all other vaccines, apart from this one, like I'm fully vaccinated, Nate's fully vaccinated. I'm not telling anyone to do one thing or the other. What I am saying, what does concern me, is the media messaging that's coming out there is telling people to do a certain thing. And again, AstraZeneca was all real safe and the right thing to do until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And what is reckless to me is the media's willingness to go and tell everyone to do a certain line of thinking. And again, you see this in politics all the time. And Donald Trump was famous for this because it's effective. Is if you just repeat the same thing over and over and over again, it just embeds in people's brains and they start to believe it's fact, because it becomes like a subconscious thing that you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, so it must be fact. And yeah, the issue is that like the media can go out and tell everyone to do things. There's no liability on them if it's the wrong information. And I mean, I even find it interesting that like even what we call the media has changed. It used to be the news. You used to turn on the news in the morning.
Yeah.
It's not the news anymore, it's the media.
Yeah.
Media is completely different to news.
So I saw something interesting before I came here this morning. It was on Sunrise, and they were talking about what the health minister had said, and to get different viewpoints, they got two media junkies, two media companies to talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like
that's right.
So the media is getting more media people to talk about. Oh no, they call them the kings of spin.
Huh. Right.
The kings of spin.
Yeah.
Well, that's like how does that information actually help us? It's
Yeah.
Anyway,
And
it sucks.
So
it all sucks.
Talking about spin, so I heard this. It's really interesting to see how news broadcasts put themselves together in an order to put across a certain perspective. And if you think they're not doing this, you're kidding yourself. You're just being sold to. But I found it really interesting this morning. I flicked on ABC News just to see what was happening with the lockdown. And the first story they had was about the... The first story they had was about... It was like a really nice puff piece about the vaccination centres in Victoria, which were being overrun with people, but the doctors were taking photos of all the dogs that people were bringing in their cars, and it was this real nice, puff piece of, oh look at this cute dog, and because all these
pup piece.
The next story was about the lockdowns and about how the number of cases had risen to 35. The next one was about how good they're going with the testing. So 56,000 people tested, and a record number of people vaccinated yesterday in Melbourne, which was 21,000 people, apparently. The next story was about how that number would be a lot higher, except the system that they use for you to call in to book your appointment crashed. It's crashed 3 days in a row. So what they're doing is creating that sense of urgency of everyone else is doing it. So you've got this herd mentality of they're convincing everyone that everyone else is running out to do this thing. You've built urgency because of the number of cases that are rising. You built more urgency again because you're talking about how it's so overwhelmingly popular that the phone lines have crashed, so you better get in quick. And if you're lucky enough to get through on the phone, then you're one of the lucky ones. And then they also even link it all back together by going like, oh, look at all these like responsible dog owners who like.
See, I don't see it like that.
You don't?
No. So I see that as the perfect get-out clause. I think the media's playing both sides. The saying that the site keeps crashing tells me don't bother ringing because you're not going to get through. And do you know what? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the whole
that's
feeling.
The way that you take
that's
that.
the whole feeling that I had towards it. You've just given me the perfect out.
Yeah. Okay.
You've said that the thing goes that it's crashed 3 times in a row. Guess what? I ain't lining up.
And it's interesting because I think you're like there are obviously everyone's different, and there are multiple ways that people are going to take this. I again like spoken about a million times. I often talk about our human biology and as social creatures. Like there was that experiment that they did, which we used to talk about in sales all the time, and it was. You might remember this video. It was a hotel that was trying to convince their people to reuse their towels. And what they found was that so if they didn't put up any signs or anything like that, the majority of people would just use their towels once, throw them on the floor, so housekeeping would take them and have to wash the towels. And they stepped it through, and I can't remember the exact steps, but they found that, so they would put a sign up saying, please reuse your towel. And just because, so that's just an example of the right thing to do is to reuse a towel because someone's asked me to do it. And they found that there was a slight bump in the percentage of people who would reuse their towels. Then they tried a different sign, which was the majority of people who stay in our hotels reuse their towels. And they found a massive uptick in the amount of people that reused them because as social creatures, we want to feel included by all of our peers, right? So when everyone else is doing it, I should probably do it too. And then the last step that they had was they added, for environmental reasons, the majority of people who use our hotels reuse their towels. So then you've also got another call to action, which is kind of like it sounds like a really nice thing, but it's also a guilt trip at the same time, where not only, if you don't do it, not only you're not doing what everyone else is doing, but you're destroying the environment at the same time. So the way that I take that news story this morning was, again, bringing in that factor of, well, everyone else is doing this, so you should be doing it too, and then creating a fear of missing out by talking about the phone lines crashing. That's the way that I took it.
Yeah, I took it the complete opposite.
Yeah, okay. Oh, put it in the comments. Like, which way would you have taken that sort of messaging? Because we'll actually find out whether or not that sort of messaging is effective from the media. You don't need to tell us what it is that you're going to do, because I can tell you right now, I don't care. You can make the decisions that are right for you. And just on that point too, I saw there was a post on Facebook this morning, and it was some Perth news company, and it was like, what is your opinion on this? Like 2 out of 3 people say that you don't need to have children to live a fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, Tasha read it out to me.
Right. So I put a comment on that, and I said, the number one best way to have a happy life is to live it the way that you want to live it, not based on everyone else's opinions.
True that.
True that.
And on that note,
thanks very much for joining us, guys. We'll see you next RDO.